Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi mining community, welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Emanuel Proenca, who's the CEO of Savannah Resources, one of Europe's leading conventional lithium development companies with one of the most significant lithium raw material assets within the European Union. Emanuel is an experienced business executive and an expert in energy transition in mobility, with a strong track record of managing fuel production and market development, electrification of mobility, liquid fuels hedging, trading logistics and retail of liquid fuels, and also digitalisation. Emanuel's going to give us an overview of Savannah Resources, how the project is going to help with Portugal's energy transition, and obviously much more. Hi Emanuel, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, and thank you, Rob. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet everyone who's here listening.
And yourself. As we always start these podcasts off, I just wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about your career and about your background, what you've done during your career. We were speaking just offline earlier. You're sort of relatively new to the mining industry. So I just wondered if you could just tell us about your background so our audience knows a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So the first thing, as you said, is I'm only a mining guy now for 8 months. So I had never worked in the mining industry, and I had to be reminded that in my engineering graduates, I had my mining and geology course as part of it. So this is a new sector for me, but truth is that I have experienced a variety of other sectors through my career, and so changing sector is actually not something new, and it's something actually that I really enjoy. It gives me the opportunity to learn a lot, and it gives me the opportunity to be humble and to understand that I am part of a team, that I need to build a team around me, and that I need to learn and get the experience as much as possible from my colleagues and from everyone surrounding me. Starting with the fact that I'm Portuguese, as is quite obvious, I had the luck of studying in a language school, in the French school in Lisbon, then studying industrial engineering at Técnico, basically the most reputed and respected engineering university in Portugal. And from then on, I basically did always roles associated to industry and to energy, both in strategy consulting, but then also as an executive and as a CEO. So I've had the opportunity to lead a cork stopper producer, very typical of Portugal. The company was actually the global number 3 back then. So a global footprint present in more than 50 countries. It was a very exciting endeavor, but it was also a very challenging one because we were basically restructuring the company from scratch. It had gone through almost bankruptcy, and we needed to recover it fast. And it was recovered. The company was resold. Then it still thrives. It grew its talent pool from then to today, and it continues to develop well. So I was very lucky to be part of that. I was also very lucky to be part of this company that we grew from a quite local to regional fuels downstreamer into one of the main companies of Portugal in both fuels midstream and downstream. And by doing so, we also created what is today the market leader in energy transition in mobility in Portugal. They are the biggest producer of advanced biofuels from waste feedstock. They're also the biggest seller and producer of green fuels. They have brought to the market a set of new alternatives to decarbonize mobility at the product level, which is not very frequent, and they became also number 1 to number 2 in electromobility. And while doing that, we also created an association of which I was the president until 2 weeks ago, ABA, the Advanced Biofuels Association, and had the opportunity to learn a lot about energy transition. And Savannah is a mining endeavor, but it is also an energy transition endeavor, and it is a Portuguese endeavor. And these three things need to be tied together so as to bring the best of the project to market and execute to the best standards also. So you need to understand that there is a level of complexity associated to mining this resource and to developing it very well. And I obviously need to be very much supported in doing so. And I'm very lucky to have a very strong team, both based out of Perth and based out of Portugal, Boticas, with very, very experienced engineers supporting me in that front. We also need to understand that we are in Portugal, and by being in Portugal, we need to have boots on the ground. We need to be connected to the local community. We need to understand the logic of doing business in the country. We need to understand the support mechanisms that exist for this endeavor, and we need to understand that we are part of Europe. And this is probably one of the most interesting assets if played correctly. It's one of the relevant things that make Savannah quite unique when comparing to other lithium ventures. And third thing, it is lithium, and by being lithium, it is fully associated to energy transition. So the opportunity to develop such a project in Europe according to European standards, but today, in today's environment, is also associated to the fact that we are responding to one of the main challenges that Europe needs to go through, both in terms of accelerating its own energy transition, but also in terms of doing it while mitigating geopolitical risks and while ensuring that the full automotive industry that exists and is very important for European markets stays here and is able to thrive here. Okay, so there's a lot of things at play in the three fronts, and putting them all together and articulating them well is something that I believe the current team can help with. Let me give you three more things about my past, and I'll then pass on to Savannah, which is probably more interesting. But I have led companies for now over 10 years, and I have worked with companies in the energy sector, both in Portugal, in Spain, in the UK, in France, in the US, with governments of India, with companies in Brazil. So I really had the opportunity to go through many different experiences, and all of these experiences, I think, helped me in bridging the industry gap and in supporting this project better. What I like to do most is to lead companies through this adventure of going from a company that is just getting started in some aspects into a fully producing and fully value executing company. And in the mining sector, companies need to stay a lot of years in that development stage where they're looking for the best resource and then proving the resource and showing that the resource is really there, that it is fully de-risked from the understanding of what is below ground, at the same time that they need to grow through the licensing stages. And I know that many, when looking at a project like Savannah, thought, well, can these guys do it in Europe? Can these guys go through all the licensing processes in Europe? And do they really have a good resource there? And turns out that we were able to go through the most important steps of licensing, and that we have an amazing spodumene, battery-grade spodumene resource there. And so it turns out that after a lot of years of work, we have the key ingredients in place. And now is the time to go from here to production. And going from here to production requires a lot of things that need to be done in parallel and need to be done very well. It requires building a very solid execution team. It requires financing. It requires the engineering to be bulletproof. It requires construction to be well controlled. It requires the company to become more Portuguese in many aspects. It requires so many things. But when you do all of them, and obviously you will have challenges in the process, but when you do all of them, after 4 or 5 years, the company has nothing to do with what it was at start. And that transformation step is really something that excites me, something that I have done in the past in other sectors and with other companies, and that I hope I'll be able to deliver here also.
I just wondered, obviously becoming CEO of Savannah Resources, what led you to become, leaving Prero to become the CEO of Savannah Resources? And also just wondering if you just tell us a little bit about the company or a snapshot of Savannah Resources and what you're doing.
Yeah. So let me get the first question, the second question first. So Savannah is getting close to celebrating 15 years of existence. It was always listed on London's AIM, and it looked for resources a bit throughout the world. It had development projects in countries like Finland, but also Oman, Mali, Mozambique, Australia, and the likes. And in 2017, it included in its portfolio the Barroso project in northern Portugal. And since 2017, when going through better understanding the resource and the potential that is there, it also started to divest the other ventures, focus fully on lithium and on these projects. And why did it do so? Just simply because the resource is so amazing and so important to be developed very well. The company in these 7 years of working in the Barroso region has already invested close to 10 million euros there, to 40 million euros there, I'm sorry. So it already is an important investment for a company at the stage in which Savannah is. But it is an investment that is done with the support of the critical investors, of the critical shareholders of Savannah, with very solid understanding that the opportunity that is there is really amazing. So the decision to divest Mozambique that we sold to Rio Tinto, or to divest Oman that we sold to another Australian developer and to Omani investors, was a very conscious decision given the opportunity that exists here. The company today has basically three locations. It has the financial center of the company, and the headquarters are still in the UK, mostly in London. The engineering team is based out of Perth, and it's composed of engineers who are very experienced. They went through supporting or actually executing on the development of the likes of Pilbara, Greenbushes, and Mount Caitlin's and the likes. So they know how to do lithium projects. They know how to develop spodumene projects specifically, and they have the credentials to ensure that we have the best engineering and the best geology and mining skills together with us. But then all of these needs to be transposed to European reality, and that's what the Portuguese team does, and it then does the execution on the ground. So today you have more and more of this transfer of knowledge from Australia to northern Portugal. And it's the Portuguese team that needs to be developed and grown over the coming months so as to deliver the full project. So this on Savannah. On the asset itself, basically we have today, on a JORC estimate, we have 28 million tons of resource that includes spodumene at a lithium oxide equivalent of 1.05 to 1.20. In some areas we go to 2.5 and even to 3% in some locations. But truth is that we're very happy with the average grades of material that we have there. We're also very happy with the other minerals that compose the resource. We have a bit of mica, but it's very much in control, much less than you would expect for a spodumene resource. And then we have quartz and feldspar. And both of them are interesting and important to develop also together with the spodumene. Quartz is used for the glass industry, and Iberia has a strong tradition of glass industry, and northern Portugal actually has some companies that are specialists in the sector. So it is a resource that is interesting and usable in the region. And then feldspar, on top of being a critical material under the Critical Raw Materials Act that was just put into force only 2 weeks ago, is also the base element of the ceramics industry. And the ceramics industry is pretty much developed mostly in Portugal, but also in Spain. So these are two additional elements of the equation that are quite interesting for local and regional purposes. On the spodumene side, the fact that we have a good grade, the fact that we have it quite shallow, that we can work on an open pit basis, that we are in a region that can attract the talents to work there without needs of fly in, fly out, and other complex elements. make it a very interesting resource to be worked. According to our maths, if we were producing today, we would probably be very close to the 50th percentile of the global cost curve. And this is a cost curve that includes brines as it includes lepidolites. So on a spodumene basis, given the resource that we have and given the mixture of quartz and feldspar that supports it, we can be very well placed also from a cost perspective. And this is at the same time that we comply with European rules. And complying with European rules has required the project to be much more sound from an environmental perspective or from a local impact perspective. So there are elements of the projects that are more ambitious in those fronts, require more effort and more work, but make the projects tremendously strong from any ESG related standpoint or from any perspective that you think is required over the coming years, over the coming decades. I think that the industry will become more and more demanding in so many terms associated to ESG, and we will be very well positioned and producing in one of the main consuming regions.
Obviously, you mentioned you've been with Savannah for 8 months now. What are your plans in terms of growing the business into the future?
So we are full on in getting this to production. Being full on means that we have a lot to do, and we want to do it over the course of the coming 2 years. So we want to get to end 2026 in production. And that requires finalizing the FS and finalizing also licensing associated compliance work. So it's not licenses themselves that are at stake anymore. It's just compliance with what the license asked us to do. Okay. It requires also structuring the financing, contracting construction, going through construction, and then through a production start and then ramp up. So executing everything according to plan means that we will be starting to produce in 2026 and we'll have a full year of production in 2027. It is important for us to execute very well in all these fronts. We know that these next 2 years are challenging years, and then we need to be at our best in all the fronts. But we also know that by doing so, we will be very, very well positioned. We will be delivering our product in 27, 3 years ahead of the targets of the Critical Raw Materials Act, and bang in line with the demands of the sector. The demand for lithium is growing as we speak. It is growing. It will continue to grow at rates above 20% per year. It has grown 30% last year. We saw some signs of a bit less exuberance in the first months of this year. We now see that the market continues to be vibrant in terms of electric vehicle demand, and we haven't even started to see the demands after the European legislation for CO2 for tailpipe emissions, for example, has a new important step which happens in 2025. We haven't seen China reaccelerating its economy. We haven't seen the US accelerating its demand for electric vehicles. So many things are to happen over the coming 5 years, and all of these things will go in the direction of supporting the need for much more lithium, and for much more lithium that comes from very environmental compliance and conscious projects like ours.
Obviously, you mentioned challenges. What would you say some of the challenges or major challenges that you're going to face, or are you facing now and over the coming years? I suppose that's for yourself and for Savannah.
Yeah. Well, for myself and for Savannah, it's the same challenges. So I'm fully committed to making this project be a success, and the team is also. And that means that we have a lot of fronts to work on, as referred, in the shortest period of time possible, and executing very well in a variety of fronts with speed is obviously a challenge in itself. We're conscious of the challenge and we want to succeed, but we obviously, if required, and if we need an extra week or an extra month here and there in the timeline, we will obviously want to make sure we do things right first. But I think we can deliver in the time frame that we are expecting to deliver. The other challenge is associated to perceptions. This was a project that was not very well treated by the media and by a local group in the last few years. This is changing as we speak. In the last few months, things changed, and I think we are now much more able to tell the world why we believe the project is so important and is so well done and will be so good for so many people. But for a while, it has not been the case, and so changing the narrative and being able to explain how good the project is an exercise in itself, and it requires not only moments like this that we are multiplying with a variety of media outlets as we speak. We have started mostly with local and then national media. We'll also do that a bit more internationally over the coming months. But it also requires, or even more important, a lot of boots on the ground, a lot of talking locally, a lot of engaging locally, a lot of being able to incorporate some comments and feedback to generate goodwill, a lot of building the team there so as to have everyone understand that it's their neighbors or their friends who are part of this project, and a lot of building partnerships with the local stakeholders. A project of this size in a region like the northeastern Portugal, which is a region that has suffered a lot from emigration, from loss of opportunities in the last decades, that hasn't had that many opportunities to thrive, is a project that can touch a lot of positives in the region. And doing that while speaking Portuguese is obviously much easier, and is something that we are pretty much focused in doing. And as referred, only in the last 4 to 6 months I have seen a significant evolution locally. I think we will continue to go down that route. For everyone that listens to your podcast, social and local acceptance challenges are normal. They're almost a given for most of the projects. But in this one, it is something that we are particularly keen in doing well, and I am certain we will be able to do well. And that supports, obviously, the good execution of the project overall.
Yeah, obviously you just mentioned the local community. What are some of the benefits to the local community, obviously, in what you're doing?
Well, there are so many. So one thing is the facts and what they are, and the second thing is to communicate them. And I need to understand, and we need to accept that we need to do this step by step in the local communication. But in a region, so the concession area is actually in a non-populated area, but it is acceptably close to small villages that are between 50 and 200 people in population. So all of the villages, if you put a radius of 5 kilometers around the concession area, all the villages will have about 600 people today, an average age above 70, not many opportunities, and a lot of emigration in the last decades. The whole municipality in which we operate has 6,000 people today. We alone will employ more than 300 people, close to 350 directly. Indirectly, the project will generate between 1,000 and 2,000 jobs. This is a number that was the result of a study we did with a local university and with specialists in local impact. So only with that, you basically are able to revamp the whole region at once. But after that, you have all the royalties, and royalties are an important element of the equation. Only for our project and for the local municipality, you can add probably about 10 million euros in royalties. For a municipality that has similar to that number in total budgets today, so they double the budget only with royalties, and so the capacity to invest and to develop the region multiplies by a factor of many more times, because obviously the captive expenses and the normal expenses to run the municipality stay there, they don't change. So you have a very big potential impact, positive impact there. Then you have a third impact, which is for the broader region and for the country. The fact that we have a spodumene resource there, and that is a world-class resource, allows us to attract more interest to the country, more opportunities to develop the country through this electric vehicle value chain that we can feed either totally or partially from our project. And we see that in Portugal you have an interest for that development. Only in Portugal we have seen announcements of 3 lithium refineries. It is not normal for a country of 10 million people in the western tip of Europe. So it shows that we as a country can tap into this opportunity of electrification of mobility from the start of the value chain and develop the whole value chain. There is also an investment of a quite large battery plant that was announced by CALB in the country, and we, through the project of building partnerships, have talked to many of the big players in the sector, both in the lithium space, but also in the mining space, in the refining space, in the battery space, in the electric vehicle space, and we see a lot of interest in our project and also in the ecosystem that we can help build in Portugal and in Iberia through developing the project. So that's the third element of value that we can bring. And then there's also all the other social aspects that come with developing a project like this and requiring a lot of talents, local talents, to work with us along a few decades.
There is obviously some mining taking place in Portugal, but obviously only minimal mining of lithium right now for the ceramics industry. How important is the Barroso lithium project in Portugal, in Portugal's energy transition? And if we then take a step further to Europe's energy transition?
Yep. So let me put what we can deliver in perspective of the energy transition field. So as I told you, my previous experience was in a fuel downstreamer that became the leader in energy transition in mobility in the country. By developing all of the fronts that we developed, we managed to build a company that today has revenues of 1.7, 1.8 billion euros. So it became a quite large company in terms of revenue. It today employs more than 1,500 people. So the talent pool associated to the company is also quite big. And we did that not from Lisbon and from Oporto, but from a smaller village in coastal Portugal. So there are a few interesting parallels to what we can build here. But on top of that, all the efforts that we did allows the country to reduce the oil consumption or the oil equivalence consumption by 1%, 1 to 1.5%. That's the impact that you can get in building a leader in energy transition when you work downstream. Here with Savannah, we work a bit further upstream. And the size of the resource is such that we can produce 200 KT of spodumene per year throughout the project. We may at some point be able to grow that number, but for now, what we have licensed and what we're working on is a 200 KT spodumene resource. That is equivalent to feeding 500,000 electric vehicles per year. That's equivalent to 3 times the Portuguese fleet. Okay, so the 1.5% of oil equivalents transforms into 300% of oil equivalent. That's the size of the impact that you can have when working upstream in a project such as the Barroso Lithium project. So for the country and for the country's energy transition, it is critical. And this is a country that is actually very well positioned in terms of energy transition. It has an almost fully electrified production, fully green production of electricity. In the first tender for the hydrogen bank, the European Hydrogen Bank, the results just came out last month. Out of 7 projects that won it throughout Europe, 2 projects are in Portugal, and it's through green hydrogen projects that are quite big. In terms of producing green fuels out of waste, used cooking oil and other waste, we are a European benchmark. So in many fronts, Portugal is already very well positioned in the energy transition, but not in producing the electric vehicles for the energy transition, and not in producing the raw materials for that. As you rightly pointed, we actually already have a bit of an experience in working lithium, because lithium is very useful for the ceramics industry. And so even though we have a lot of quarries and mines that work for the ceramics industry, they normally work feldspar mixtures that have 0.5 to 0.7, 0.8% of lithium in some moments, because that is good. It reduces the fusion temperature in the processes for ceramics. Okay, so by having that, we have a small production of lithium, and that small production already makes us the largest producer of lithium in Europe. Okay, but it's 800 tons or something like that. The project's 800 tons of lithium oxide equivalent. Our project with 200 KT of FC 5.5% will produce 25,000 tons equivalent. So the magnitude is totally different. And that magnitude makes the project important, not only for Portuguese, from a Portuguese perspective, but also from a European one. And here we come to the Critical Raw Materials Act and the needs that the industry has over the coming years. The European vehicle producing industry is an industry that today employs 16 million people. Most of these people are high-paying jobs, or have high-paying jobs in countries like Germany and France, but also Italy, but also Portugal and Spain. In Portugal and Spain, you produce 20% of the vehicles that are consumed throughout Europe. So it is an important industry also for Portugal and Spain, and not only for Germany and France. But for the European bloc, it is a critical industry, and one in which everyone has understood we need to speed up so as to transform it in time to counter the Chinese pressure and so on. And I think we will need to do that together with Chinese in many aspects, also to be clear. The Critical Raw Materials Act in many aspects sets targets that people feel are very ambitious. And one of the targets is associated to the raw materials themselves. And in lithium, in feldspar, and in some of the other minerals that are critical for this transformation, the target that is set is 10% of the European demand when demand is at its top. We have done the maths. We can, only with our project, comply with a third of that objective. Okay, so our project alone can deliver a third of the Critical Raw Materials Act objective for lithium. So a target that seemed ambitious given the tradition that Europe has in mining and the fact that it hasn't developed that many mining projects in the last 20 years becomes totally achievable when you understand that only a single project can deliver a third of that. And if we optimize both the use of our lithium and our production, we'll probably be able to do a bit more than that. Okay? So that's how important the project can be for Europe. We can feed alone probably 3 to 5 gigafactories of electric vehicles. So it is significant from every aspect and every measure that you see.
Let's talk about the Barroso lithium project in, I suppose, a little bit more detail. Where is the project on the development timeframe or timeline? And what are the key milestones over the next sort of couple of years before production can begin? And again, any challenges that you can envisage coming up during that whole timeline?
Yeah. I'll start with de-risking steps of the last year, because you also had, Rob, I think you also had the predecessor of my predecessor in your podcast, I think 2 years ago. He unfortunately passed, only a month ago. So it was an unfortunate moment, and he obviously is missed in the company. But he had left the company now for 2 years. And in these last 2 years, the project has evolved a lot. It has become much stronger in terms of engineering. It has become much stronger in terms of environmental compliance to a level that is basically almost not comparable to the previous one, and that's the reason why it got the environmental approvals. Okay, and it has gone through all the steps required to have the JORC estimate revised upwards, both in terms of size and in terms of classification, and also to allow us to deliver a scoping study that was almost like a PFS. So the scoping study was very robust back then. We did that at the start of summer last year, just before I joined, and and we simulated the NPV of the project with only 20 million tons, not 28 million tons of resource. So 20 million tons that were already approved from an environmental perspective, and with 180k tons of production per year, which is the bare minimum that we will do. We also simulated at $1,500 the SC price. You will say that, well, today you are at 1,100, 1,200, so the 1,500, is that ambitious or not? And I can obviously answer to that question. But with these elements, the project delivered $1 billion in NPV, okay, or very close to $1 billion. So the project is a very sound one, also from the economic perspective and from the value perspective for shareholders. What we have done since then is to progress to the FS at the same time that we progress to the confirmation of the environmental approval, and that we progress in being better understood locally and nationally. And also that we start working on the partnerships both at the local and at the international level. And we will be delivering over the coming months some very interesting results in some of these fronts. So the most important milestone for us is the FS, and we hope we are able to get the DFS out before the end of this year. And as we do the FS, then we'll be able to close the financial package and close the construction package and start building next year. We expect 12 months of construction. It may go to 15 months, 12 to 15 months of construction, and that is what is in line with the timeline that I referred, that will allow us to be in production in end 2026. While doing that, we will evolve the team, we will evolve the local partnerships, we will probably be looking at some additional opportunities to add to the concession area that we already have. And so I think it will be very exciting times to follow for everyone who likes the sector.
The EU CRMA is now law. Do you think this will really kickstart project development and supply chain security within the EU? And do you think the EU is doing enough to support businesses like yours?
Well, I've developed projects in Europe for a while now, so I have gone through a variety of cycles of legislation and execution in some other industries. I know that Europe tends to take long to legislate, but then starts executing quite well. Okay? And I also know that I have, in the other sectors I've worked with, I have never seen such a sense of urgency as I see today in CRMA, but also in other elements that are associated to developing this industry. So the level of urgency, the speed at which the CRMA was delivered after it started, the interactions we have with European policymakers, but also with European institutions such as the IB and many others, make me conclude today that yes, Europe will be able to deliver on its strategy and will be able to speed up. At the same time I say this, I acknowledge that we have come a bit later than we should into the party. And so Europe has taken a bit too long to get to an act that basically sets up the framework for a strategy, for a joint strategy that now can be executed. The advantage that China has is based on the fact that it started doing that 10 years before Europe and the US did. It is true that the US responded to the challenge quite effectively and fast with IRA, but it is also true that CRMA is a more complete and more instrument in some senses. So it is more complex, but also more complete and more targeted at some of the subsectors that need to act in order to execute. From Savannah's perspective, it is better late than never, but it will for sure come still in time to support. The advantage that we have is that we have started 7 years ago. So I think that the CRMA will struggle to see some of the projects that are at a very early stage today accelerate to execute before 2030. I think it will speed up the development of these projects for sure, but mining project is still a mining project, and so it requires steps of de-risking that are important and that they need to go through. It's not only licensing and executing the transformation, and in the licensing aspect is also a challenge for Europe. It will be able to do it, but it will take a few months before it has everyone on the same page, and before at a national level the legislation is repassed and the adjustments are made at the level of the institutions that need to deliver the licenses themselves, right? So all of these things need to be put together, and I am sure that the whole sector will accelerate, but it will accelerate first with those that have come to the party a bit earlier, and so have gone through the de-risking steps before. And I think that is one of the big opportunities for Savannah. So it is not that we will take very advantage from a faster licensing process, given that we have already gone through most of our licensing process for the base project, but for expansions, for other projects, for other opportunities that come, we will be very well positioned, because we will have a project that is already in place and already in operation. We will have the expertise in-house to deliver other projects, and we will be able to speed up other projects, or to speed up the growth of these projects specifically, together with the CRMA that will already be fully in place and will already have ensured that the European industry has the legislative tools to deliver at the speed that is required. Right? It is also important to state another thing. From an energy transition perspective and from an electrification of mobility perspective, we have come late to the start of the party in Europe. Okay, we haven't come late to the whole game. If we were in a football match, we would probably be in the first 10 minutes of the match. Okay, we still have a lot to electrify. We still have a lot of mobility to transform. We still have a lot of pieces of this new puzzle to put together. So the growth that is required over the coming 2 decades is gigantic. The transformation is gigantic, and we can still be the relevant part of the equation over the coming years if we do things very right in the coming 2-3 years.
Why don't you just tell us a little bit about the commercials and finance interests within the project?
So I gave you some of the numbers that allow me to say that this is the most interesting spodumene project in Europe, and one of the most interesting lithium projects in Europe. By being spodumene, it not only has the size, but also the ability to go directly into battery-grade lithium, which is something very important, and it also has the ability to do that in a very cost-competitive fashion, and with technology risk fully controlled. I know that there are a variety of other projects in Europe that will for sure deliver the expected results, but they have technology challenges to overcome. Spodumene is it's bread and butter for the industry. It's something that we know as an industry how to work with, and we, Savannah, given that we have the Australian team, are best fit to work with. So a project that connects size, controlled technology risk, licensing, ability to deliver. It is positioned in a location that, even though is interior Portugal, it's only 150 kilometers away from the port, and it has amazing highways to serve it, and it has 5 ports to pick from. Okay? In European jurisdiction is something quite unique. It allows us to be very well positioned to serve the refining sector that needs to be developed throughout Europe. And if the CRMA objective for raw materials is 10%, for refining it's 40%. So Europe will always be a short market in terms of the need for lithium. It will always need to have lithium coming in from the outside. And so it will cherish even more the opportunity to have some of that lithium coming from the inside, avoiding logistics costs, avoiding geopolitical risks, and so on and so forth. Okay? And so the delivery of this project is evidently associated to strong value generation. With whom we will partner up is something is part of the next episodes of the novel. Okay, so we have 2 very solid investment banks working with us in tapping the various opportunities. In the last months, we have talked to probably close to 100 very credible companies in the various sectors that we can serve or that we can work with the support of Barclays and Barrenjoey. Barclays very well known by everyone. Barrenjoey very well known by mining experts, specifically out of Australia and the lithium space. And so we're very confident that we'll be able to deliver interesting partnerships over the coming years, and that by delivering these partnerships, we will have the commercial and the financial aspect very well sorted out. Value generation in this sector is also associated to ensuring that we strike the best deals possible. So we're focused on striking the best deals possible.
And lastly, what's the outlook, and I suppose the short to medium term outlook for Savannah Resources?
Well, we need to go through all of these steps, right? So we will be hiring more. We will be reinforcing the technical team with the mining execution expertises that are needed, but also with the plants operation expertises. We will for sure have developments in these commercial and financial fronts that I hope will be seen as very interesting by the market. We will, as we deliver on the DFS, we will hopefully also have good news on the resource side. After we deliver DFS and we start building, we will also be able to work a bit more on the remaining resource, because all of the resource, the ore bodies that we have today are still open, both to the sides and further down. And whenever we have gone down, we have seen more mineralization and more spodumene concentration. So we also know that there are a few more opportunities out there, both in Portugal and throughout Europe. So it will be exciting times in all fronts, I would say. And also at the same time that we make the story better understood from a Portuguese and local perspective, I think we will also have more support. And by having more support, we will also have more opportunities to do good at the project level, but also for the region in which we will be operating.
Yeah, and I've got another last question. I wonder if you just tell us about the management team as well, and I suppose what management and executive team, and what value and importance do they bring to the company?
Sure. So at the same time that I have gone through a variety of sectors and also a variety of companies, I have worked with Anglo-Saxon and listed companies in the past, but I haven't managed them. So it is the first time I am faced with the Anglo-Saxon way of building the governance, ensuring proper execution at all times, and so on. And it's very, very interesting to see how an effective board can help you with execution. It is also very interesting to see how a listed company has its own features, and especially a pre-revenue listed company, but also can help you deliver fast and to maximal value. The board that we have is a strong board already, and I think as we progress, it will become even stronger. It includes people who have gone through many years of BHP Billiton, for example, through many years of doing other mines throughout the world, of raising money to develop mining projects with junior miners and bring them to become large miners or to become very interesting targets for a later acquisition. So that board, with Bruce Griffin, with Will Ferguson, with Mohamed, with Diogo from the Portuguese perspective, is a very strong board that helps us deliver. It also has the support of Mary Jo, for example, who is a very experienced governance and crisis management expert. And that was very important because you may know that we were involved in a big confusion that was called Operation Influencer investigation in November. Wouldn't we have very solid governance procedures and very solid controls in the company, it would have been harder to come out of that mess. Okay, and so this board helps us also with those aspects of ensuring that we are doing things right and that we are executing to the best standards. In the executive team, we also have, as referred, people who have done lithium projects in the past in Western Australia, but also other mining endeavors a bit throughout the world. And so that is also a very important asset and a very important support to execution. But we also have very solid geologists in the Portuguese side, people who know very well the region, know very well the resource itself, and know very well how to bring it or how to help it come to production. They also know very well how to grow that resource as we go. And these are people who have decades of experience in working in Portugal, but also in other countries like Tajikistan, like Mongolia, like Germany, like Canada, and so on. So the fact that the team is diverse and is built with very experienced people in the mining sector and in the lithium space specifically is obviously something very important. At the same time that we have this, I know that the team is not ready to deliver everything. So over the coming months, we will hire more people for some of the key roles in project delivery and execution. And I think, given now that I have seen some of the potential candidates, I am certain that we will find very good talent that will support us. The fact that we are developing a project in Portugal, I think will play to our favor at some point. Portugal has become a hot destination for many aspects. It is pleasant to live and work in the country, and that is also something that helps attract talent. And on top, Portugal has had a tradition of building mining talent that it has mostly exported to African Portuguese-speaking countries, but also to Brazil, to Canada, and even a bit to Australia. So some of them would love the opportunity to come back and to help their country also.
Yeah. Emanuel, thank you for your time. Appreciate you giving us an overview of Savannah Resources, what you're looking to achieve, the project timelines, and I suppose giving obviously Portugal, putting Portugal on the map more so in the mining industry. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions, if they want to follow Savannah's story, how can they go about doing that? What social media platform channels are you on?
SavannahResources.com, then LinkedIn and Twitter. We're a bit more active on LinkedIn perhaps, but we also have an Instagram account and so on. So what I would say, directly in our websites, directly contacting us through LinkedIn or following us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yeah, great. And all the best for your endeavours. And hopefully you can come on next year and give us an update on how the project is developing.
For sure. Thank you for the opportunity, Rob. And good luck also for your endeavours and for everyone listening.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide, not just within Portugal or within Europe. Please share them across the globe amongst our mining community so we can educate our mining community and even people outside of our mining community so they can understand what mining is about and obviously the energy transition, which I imagine a lot of people are hearing more and more about. And obviously Emanuel's just highlighted what Savannah Resources and Portugal are doing for the energy transition. So thank you for your time, and until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.